So as the economy continues to be destroyed and many Americans are actually left without a job and without a way to pay their rents and pay their bills and feed their families, a lot of people are left wondering what's next in terms of stimulus. Well, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is now pushing out a new bill called the HEROES Act that does aim to address many of those problems. But is this actually a helpful bill, or is it just partisan spending that could be better utilized? Of course, Democrats and Republicans are debating this very question as we speak, but in today's video, we're going to quickly cover what's included in the bill, why some Republicans are pushing back against it and saying that there needs to be some changes to it before they're actually willing to even consider it, and what those changes might be. And of course, I'll also try to share my personal thoughts and opinions on this in as much of a unbiased way as possible. And I know that's not easy when you get into politics, but I'm not much of a political person myself, so I'll try to be as much in the middle as possible and just really share with you my honest thoughts. But I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll leave you some timestamps down below as well in case you want to jump to a specific section. All I ask is that you please hit the like button if you enjoy this update. It really means a lot to me and it really helps the channel as well. But with all that said, we got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and cover actually some unemployment numbers to see how bad of a shape America is in right now, and then we'll jump straight into the proposed bill. Well, as of today, you're now dealing with nearly a 15% unemployment rate in the country, which, by the way, is just the official counted number, but many feel that the actual number could be even worse. But again, officially, we lost another over 20 million jobs just in the month of April alone, putting us at a historic unemployment rate that is greater than the Great Recession, and one that we haven't even seen this high since the Great Depression. Speaking of which, that rate was about 25% at that time, and while we're still a ways away from that number, one White House economic advisor is predicting rates to surge past 20%, which would definitely be getting us much closer to those Great Depression levels, with the worst numbers coming in either May or June, as that advisor is predicting. And because of this impending doom, many Americans are left wondering when they will be allowed to work again, since we are now approaching 2 months of lockdown in the country, and yet some of the largest states like California and New York are still under majority lockdown, while most other states have only partially reopened. Of course, that's also led to many wondering if more aid is on its way, even after trillions of dollars have already been spent. As you might recall, back in March, the government passed the largest stimulus bill in US history for a whopping $2 trillion, part of which gave one-time direct payments of $1,200 to Americans, which, let's be real here, it's a nice little bonus to anyone who still has a job, but for those that really need the money, $1,200 might not even cover a month of rent for them in many cases, especially in ridiculously overpriced states like California or New York. As a result, though, recent surveys like this one from Wallet Hub are showing that most Americans do want to receive another stimulus check, while others take it a step further, like this one from Forbes, that shows over 90% of Americans want those checks to be recurring monthly for anyone that has seen their wages impacted by the lockdowns. And even 74% want those monthly checks regardless of employment status as well. Although, to be thorough, there is some division here among party lines, as 96% of Democrats support such a move, while only 53% of Republicans support the same action, but it's still a majority. In fact, only 22% of all respondents believe that we've already spent too much money. As far as where I stand, I personally cannot believe the gigantic amounts of money that we're spending, and I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't worried about the long-term repercussions of all of this. But I also feel bad for all the people out there losing their jobs or even their businesses and are in desperate need of aid. So I think helping them in a smart and efficient way is fine, but in the end, I do think that the only real solution here is to figure out a way to safely reopen the economy as soon as possible. In any case, there's a clear demand from most of the population to receive additional support, and that's led to some Democrats in Congress pushing a new bill that would be yet another record-breaking amount, this time a whopping $3 trillion in federal relief that will also include new stimulus checks, although the bill dubbed the HEROES Act still needs to be voted for in the House on Friday and later approved by the Republican dominated Senate and later, of course, the president. However, to the surprise of many progressives, despite it being literally trillions of dollars and by far the largest relief package in history, those checks will actually not be paid out monthly, but instead they will just be one-time payments just like the CARES Act of March and for the same $1,200 amount as well if you're filing as a single individual, with couples also receiving the same $2,400 amount from before. However, there is one big difference here, and that's that the last bill only gave $500 extra dollars per dependent, while this new one is increased to a whopping $1,200 per dependent, accumulating to a massive $6,000 check per family of five, where it finally does eventually max out. So that'll likely receive mixed feelings from people, since I'm sure families that qualify for like a $6,000 payday will be more than happy to receive that, while people who were hoping for monthly stimulus checks or something that more closely resembles like a universal basic income, they're going to be a little disappointed with that news. Still, there's plenty of other things in this bill that will heavily impact people and the economy. So let's quickly run through the contents of the package, and I'll try to give my quick opinions as we run through it. And then we'll break down the issues that Republicans are having with this bill and what kind of changes they would like to see. Okay, so here's the official listing of the HEROES Act. It's technically like almost 2,000 pages long, but this is like a bullet point summary here. And the Democrats note that it provides $1 trillion, so about a third of the package, to state and local governments that they claim need the money in order to pay vital workers like first responders, health workers, and teachers who they also claim are in danger of losing their jobs. I'm personally fine with helping those specific people out, but I'll comment more on this in just a second when we talk about the issues that Republicans have for it, because it is essentially a bailout for states, especially high tax ones that aren't generating tax revenues after forcing people not to work. But like I said, we'll come back to this one in just a second. Now, there's another $200 billion here for what they call the Heroes Fund, which will pay extra money to essential workers that are risking their lives during the global health issue. And I guess I'm okay with that one as long as they really are choosing people that actually deserve it. The only problem for me is that I don't generally trust the government to pick and choose who is essential and who deserves something more than others. But if I had more clarity on it and they did it the right way, then I would probably be okay with it. Now, it also includes another $75 billion for testing, contact tracing, and isolation measures, while ensuring that every American can get free treatment, and also supports hospitals and providers. And this one I am totally on board with. I think these things are absolutely essential to reopening the economy in a safe way. So I think it tackles two issues at once, both health-wise and financially, and whatever the cost is for that, I'm totally on board. Get the testing ramped up and get everyone access to treatment. I can't really see anyone who would oppose that. And not to go too deep into testing, but a lot of people are criticizing testing because it's not an actual cure. But what those people need to understand is that it was never meant to act like a cure. It's just a very useful tool for helping us get through this. The more testing and more contact tracing and also antibody testing that we do, the more data that we'll have on rates, the more we'll know who's fine to go back to work and who isn't, and the better job we'll do overall of containing the spread. So I'm just personally really on board with this one. I really like it. And then, of course, there's the direct payments that we've already discussed, but they don't specifically tell us how much that would cost. And either way, I'm not really opposed to that one. I think it's going to cost a lot of money, but at the same time, these are really horrific times that we're going through. And, I would assume that the average person could probably use a little bit of extra cash. Now, there is another 8 points on here, but I promise I'll go through them very quickly. So there's some adjustments to payroll protection, but I'm actually going to save this one for the part where I talk about what Republicans are saying, because there is some controversy with it. But there's also increased worker safety, which of course I'm totally on board with, as I think it'll help us open up the economy in a much safer way, and I think that's very important. There's also more support for small businesses and nonprofits, and does provide another $10 billion in emergency grants, which I am totally okay with as well. Now, there's also healthcare coverage for anyone that loses their job, which is another great addition in my opinion. It also extends unemployment benefits and keeps the $600 weekly bonus to those receiving unemployment benefits all the way to January instead of just through July. So basically an extra 6 months added to that. And this one, I'll admit, it is a little more controversial because some argue that it kind of incentivizes people to stay unemployed since some of them might actually make more money unemployed rather than keeping their job. But generally, I think most people would prefer to actually have a stable job rather than be unemployed. So I don't know. It's kind of a tough one. I think it might be a little too much, especially all the way to January. That sounds like a lot. I'd personally much rather just get people's jobs back by then, but who knows how this whole thing plays out. And then they also include housing assistance, which allocates around a couple $100 billion of aid to people that can't afford their rent. But digging a little deeper, Forbes notes that the bill also extends the ban on evictions from just a few months to an entire year after the bill is passed. So basically, anyone that can't pay their rent or their mortgage will have an entire year to do so, which is pretty crazy. But I would assume that after that time, they would need to pay that money back. So I can only imagine what kind of a disaster this could potentially turn into. But overall, I'm not really sure how I feel about this. I'm personally not very well experienced with real estate, but it mostly looks like a disaster waiting to happen to me. Although maybe that aid, the couple $100 billion, maybe that really helps. But I think we'll have to just kind of see how all of this plays out, and we'll have to wait until they give us a lot more clarity on that. But finally, we have the last 2 points here, and those are food security that aims to help with rising hunger rates, and the other is a very vague one that just talks about having safe and accurate elections, which I'm guessing might have to do with mail-in voting, but I'm personally not a fan of that because I think it invites a lot of corruption, but at the same time, I can't understand how it's a safety issue during this time. So I'll just kind of let you guys sound off on that down in the comment section, and I'll just kind of stay impartial on it. I think it might be okay for right now, but it's definitely not a permanent move that I want to see happen. Anyway, that was a quick rundown on some of the things that the Democrats are saying is in this bill. And of course, I gave you some of my personal kind of really quick thoughts on some of it also. But what are the Republicans actually saying about this bill, and what kind of changes would they like to see, including a possible payroll tax cut? Well, let's quickly cover those right now, and then we'll finish up the video with my overall conclusion. Okay, well, for starters, Republicans generally feel that the plan wastes too much money on things that we don't really need. Like, for example, there was mention of a few different programs. I think there was even like some art programs in there, but also a $10,000 student loan forgiveness program, for example, where, that's obviously a very highly kind of heated, debated topic these days. But reps generally feel that those payments for student loans should be kind of deferred and just kind of paid later on, but they should still be paid. Whereas Democrats would argue that, some of those student loans should just be forgiven because they're weighing down these students. But a lot of Republicans feel like that money could be better used for helping people that lost their jobs or their businesses or so on. In fact, one such issue that reps have with the bill is that it doesn't provide any more funding for the Payments Protection Program, which they claim has been a success and is money that is desperately needed by small businesses that are heavily impacted. Although on the other side of that, Democrats have argued that larger businesses have been able to receive a lot of that money instead, and so it hasn't really been as big of a success as reps are claiming it to be. I personally do like the Payment Protection Program. I do think that it's necessary, but I can kind of understand both sides. In any case, reps also take issue with the $1 trillion that will be given to states and local governments, which the Dems are arguing that the governments need it because they're not generating enough tax revenue after forcing people to stay home and not work. But they still need that money to pay for government workers in areas like healthcare, law enforcement, and education, which obviously are all very important. On the other hand, many reps argue, though, that it would be a bailout for poorly run states that have had deep financial issues well before the global health issue even started. Now, another controversy is related to payroll taxes. Now, Democrats did in fact include a payroll tax credit that is contingent on businesses keeping their employees on payroll and is also much larger than the previous one, increasing it from 50% of $10,000 of employee costs to as much as 80% of $45,000 in hopes that it will result in millions of people keeping their jobs. And I personally do like that about the bill. I do think that that's a good addition. I just think reps would take a little bit of a step further here. A lot of reps just really want to eliminate payroll taxes altogether. In fact, President Trump has actually said in the past that he wouldn't approve another stimulus package unless a payroll tax cut was included. And of course, one is not included in this bill, but maybe that's something that they will try negotiating here in the near term. Now, I don't really feel like one way or the other on this. I think we do need the money for payroll taxes, but at the same time, I guess it could help if it's only temporary. So I'll just kind of wait and see how that plays out. By the way, if you don't know what payroll taxes are, it's basically the money that is withheld from your paycheck to pay for things like Social Security and Medicare, which are, of course, two extremely bloated programs that are always argued on how we will fund them in the future. But I personally don't want to get rid of them myself because I think that too many people really need them and rely on them. But that's just my personal opinion. And by the way, payroll taxes are paid by both the employee and the employer. So a cut there would be beneficial to both sides if it was passed. And finally, the last point of contention here is definitely the one that I think people get the most heated about. So let me just remind you one more time. This does not reflect my personal feelings, although you're more than welcome to share your thoughts down below. But I'm just going to kind of stay out of it myself. But I ask you to please be nice and respectful if you do leave comments down there, because this is, of course, the topic of illegal immigration. And as it turns out, the bill does actually provide some protection for certain illegal immigrants and the businesses that hire them, as long as they are part of an essential category. That's not all, though. The bill also ensures that they too receive a $1,200 stimulus check per individual, like everyone else, even if they don't have a social security number, which is, of course, something that was not included in the CARES Act of March. And I think a lot of reps would probably not want to see this in the bill. Again, I'm going to refrain from commenting on this since I have no interest in giving half of my viewers a reason to hate me, even more than they might already. But like I said, whichever side you agree with more here, feel free to leave your thoughts down below. Just please keep it clean and respectful. Anyway, just to wrap everything up, now, I personally think that there are some really good things in this bill, but I also think that there are some bad things in this bill, or some things that could at least be kind of tweaked or changed. And I also think that $3 trillion is a bit too much. I'm a little worried about how much money we're spending. I personally would prefer to be reopening the economy and getting people their jobs back, rather than just staying locked down forever and just spending unlimited amounts of money and then having to deal with the consequences of doing that later on. But at the same time, I can completely understand why so many people are too afraid to open up the economy in a really fast way. But ultimately, I think the real solution here will be to open up the economy, not just in a quick way, but in a very safe way, or the safest way as possible. And so if it does take a little bit longer to do that, to make sure that we open up safely, then I'm okay with having some stimulus, because we're going to need that money if we're going to be opening up the economy a little bit slower. And then eventually, next year, 2021, we start to see the economy really start to ramp up. So if we need a little more money to kind of bridge that gap and get over to that other side, then I'm okay with it. I think we just need to be very strategic with how we spend that money. And as long as we do that, I'm overall mostly okay with it. Anyway, over the long term, and I've said this many times before, I'm a long-term optimist, so I will always be kind of optimistic about America and about the economy. So we will just kind of have to wait and see how all of this plays out. But in the meantime, of course, my thoughts and prayers will be with not just all of you, but the rest of the country as well, and everybody globally also. And I hope everybody stays safe out there and stays well, both health-wise and financially. This is both a health crisis and a financial crisis, no matter any way you look at it. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel. And let me know down below how you feel about all of this, anything I said in the video, anything that was included in the video, any of your thoughts, even if it's a little political. You're more than welcome to share your thoughts down below, and I'll try to respond to as many as I can. But thanks again for watching. It means the world to me, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.